Hey, welcome everybody to the Orleans 4th of July Celebration Committee, our first meeting back in person since 2019. I did send out an agenda to everybody, and the first item on the agenda is to approve our June meeting minutes. I neglected to send out the meeting minutes, so we're gonna have to defer that to the next meeting. Apologies, that was my fault. And Heather is our new clerk, and so then she'll be taking that on after. Now that the parade is over, we can get back to our duties rather than everybody jumping in at once. So we will defer that to the next meeting. The main reason for this meeting is to do a debrief of the 2021 parade and then set our upcoming tasks, which are not too many, at our next meeting dates. So to start the debrief, I think there's a lot to talk about. I think there's a lot to talk about. We would already have a lot to talk about, and then in light of everything that has been going on, we have even more to talk about. So I will start by saying I thought it was a really great parade. I think this group did a really great job pulling together something in 4 weeks. We had well over 50 entries, 23 antique cars and vehicles. We had 7 bands that we hired, and then some of the float hired bands as well. So there was a lot of music. I heard a lot of great comments about that. So job well done to everybody on that, in my opinion. And then we had the fireworks on July 10th, and Peter O'Meara from the Friends of the Fourth is here. Peter, I'd love to hear if you want to come up and just chat about the fireworks too. And Peter is our trustee parade meister, so you're welcome to talk about that as well.
Thank you.
Great job. Yeah.
So first comment, awesome job.
Thank
You know, in like 2 weeks, you really put it together. I think your comment, people were really anxious to do something outside, so I think that contributed to it. So you really all did a great job. Everybody was pretty cooperative, I think, in organizing, and you know, kind of respectful around the parking. Although I think maybe at the middle school, I heard some rumblings about people trying to penetrate our defense system.
Yeah.
But at the elementary school, there were a couple people that came that had, you know, rental cars that clearly were from far away, who were obviously flummoxed by where to go. So I let them in down the end. But other than that, nobody seemed to kind of challenge, you know.
Much better than 2 years ago.
I think so.
Yeah.
You know, much better. And the crowd was, I don't know if anybody was able to kind of figure out a numbers count, but it certainly looked bigger to me, you know, in terms of the number of, you know, people that were there. So
That's what Kevin Higgins said as well.
Yeah.
He felt driving the parade route, there were more people there than in previous years.
yeah, so great job. And I did introduce him to our niece, who was supposed to drive him originally because she was in panic mode. Told her he was the lieutenant in the police department. And she's just 16, so she just had her license. So it was really nice. He came over and chatted with her for a while. You know, and the fireworks seemed to, you know, go off without a hitch. There's a little bit of confusion about when they were going to put them in and the barge and all, but you know, the fire department, you know, was there and they kind of worked with them. So they went in at 10 on Saturday morning. They kept on checking the weather, but you know, it looked like it was gonna hold off. And because we were able to up the contract by 25%, they actually had a larger barge than they usually would. And so folks said they thought the display was better. Interestingly enough, Atlas also got the contract for Boston Common and the Hops
Wow.
Tanglewood
Yeah,
thing, so they had done that. I missed it, but my wife saw it, so it was, it was pretty impressive. So for next year, probably interested to hear about dates when you think we ought to do it. The guy from Atlas said the sooner we can let him know for next year. Because of the fundraising, we actually could probably do 2 barges. I mean, people were incredibly generous. I still get checks. We're up close to 500 donations and probably close to 20,000.
that's amazing.
Yeah,
That's-
it
That's
is,
great.
so again, just, big thanks to, and that's all from in town.
Yeah, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
We received feedback to just our committee, for the July email that people loved it, and people also were commenting that they just mailed their check-in. They said, I hope you get it before the fireworks. I said, we'll buy it next year. It won't go to waste, but, just great feedback. And I think in previous years, we've heard a request from people to maybe see if we could make the fireworks a little bit bigger. So I'm wondering, if it is possible to sustain that we did this year. I think that would be wonderful. And do you want to talk about a date now, or is it too early?
No,
Next year, I mean, we might as well jump right in. July 4th is on a Monday next year. I don't know whether you think the 3rd makes sense or the 2nd. on
he
a
suggested
Saturday.
if we could maybe do it the Friday.
The Friday, July
Yeah.
1st.
Yeah, and then, but I'll ask him what he thinks, but I think we ought to put it in that window
Yeah.
between the 1st and
And
the 4th.
it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but we never do it on the 4th because Provincetown does, is that correct?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's typically the Friends of the Fourth's decision, not ours, but I don't know if anyone has feedback for 2nd, 3rd. I would say for 2nd, 3rd, any of those dates, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. would
Just
be
not
good.
second. I mean, this gives businesses 2 cracks at the whip.
Right.
Mhm.
People come to town twice.
Yeah,
So I'd be for the 1st.
the
I'd
first.
rather separate it by 2 or 3 days than one day.
So that's the Friday,
the Friday.
Yeah.
the 1st. Okay.
Yeah, anyone else?
Jen, if I could pipe in also, Saturday is changeover day for a lot of rentals.
Yeah,
Friday might be cleaner.
that's a great point. Not to throw a wrench in, but devil's advocate on that, if people are coming Saturday the 2nd for the week, do we think we will have disappointed people who may have missed it? And I'm only bringing that up because we had people commenting that if we ruined their 4th by making it the 10th, and I let them know that it was the 10th or nothing, and thank you for your feedback.
I was actually just thinking about the police and just traffic on Saturdays is already horrible.
It's challenging, yeah. All right, I think the 1st is a good shot then.
How
And
about
we'll
a
just,
rain- how about a rain date?
rain date the Sunday the 3rd? Or do we need, I don't know how often or how the separation that normally is between. a
It's
rain-
usually, I think a minimum of 2 days, usually like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah,
What about 2 days before then?
Before the 1st.
no, the rain date,
Yeah, the rain date, 2 days before the proposed date. Keep it before the parade
right,
without if you make the rain date the 3rd, we're into,
right.
the other problems that Andrew just mentioned.
Maybe it's the 5th then, because if it looks okay and then it suddenly changes and now we've missed it, I don't think you want, yeah. But I defer, you guys always pick great dates and I defer to what you think, but I also think,
We're small.
I know you are.
There's not a lot of deliberation.
Small
Take
but
my word
mighty.
for it.
Small but mighty. And I think that if we can announce it sooner rather than later, then the people who are disappointed will have ample notice.
And
But think of all the people that will be happy.
Exactly.
I mean, it kind of
More
flashes, right?
happy
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
than us.
Okay, I'll lock those dates in.
Okay. Great,
And
thank
what we'll
you.
do, when the town puts out the contract, I think they're the ones who kind of set the, you know, the parameters about the upper limit, so they know what to bid on.
Yeah.
You know, for animals, so we'll let them know we have, you know, some extra, you know, resources. for extra. So,
Great. Thanks, Peter.
You're welcome.
Well
Thank
done.
you.
Yeah, thank you, Peter.
Okay, so Andrea, can I ask you a question, actually?
Absolutely.
So we have, I think, two debriefings to do today. One is our normal parade debrief, which I have thoughts and notes, and I do want to do a debrief. And actually, Todd was going to join via Zoom, but I guess he's not there. And then the second part is talking about the controversial group and everything that's happened and next steps for that. And I definitely think we need to talk about it today as a group, because we actually haven't discussed as a group, because we have not had the opportunity. But, you know, for future discussions or discussions about things that we can put into place, the discussions we talked about having with the town administrator's office and the select board, is that something that, you know, we'll set a date in the future to talk about guidelines or potential changes to guidelines, or is that something that we want to start the conversation today?
However you want to do it, Jen. I think,
Okay.
thank God we've got a time,
Yeah.
but I think you guys are the people on the ground that have to manage. And so for us to do it as a top down,
Right.
I think we're your backup in terms of if you can say goals, like, you know, we want to draft similar to policies to what schools have in terms of it's a family activity. I think our job is to take what you want to do and then run it through municipal law and freedom of speech and all those hurdles and figure out what we can do based on what you want to do.
Okay.
And I think that, you know, until we have a full complement of select board people, I'm happy to appear when you need me to listen
Yeah.
and to be a go-between
Okay.
as needed.
Okay. Perfect. I think we have to talk about it first and break it down, but yes.
I was just going to ask Andrew a question. Andrew, if it went to the select board, though, do you think we'd have to hold public meetings then?
You know, it's a great question, Ken. I think the first place it goes is to John Kelly and Michael Ford for municipal law. And then I'm not sure. My answer is I don't know, because it depends. I think if we're just setting policy for outdoor events, I don't think it's a public hearing. I don't know.
Okay.
I just don't know, but that I'll learn. I'll find out.
Thank you. That's good clarifying, because I just wanted to clarify. So let's start with that, because I also know that Andrea has another meeting and
Actually, Jen, I've moved that to 5:30, so I'm good.
okay. Well, let's still just start with that. So I would just like to go through everything that happened, because I don't actually think maybe everyone in this group is privy to all of the information, because we were moving so quickly. I mean, I think everyone has the information, but so as we all know, we have a parade application. Application is a strong word. It's a sign up form, entry form that is on our website. And anyone who would like to be in the parade is to sign up with this entry form. There are several people that don't use the entry form and do show up on the day of the parade, and that's just something to put out there. But right the week before the parade, the Brewstertown Republican Committee did sign up to join the parade via this entry form. I saw it come in. I saw that it was the Brewstertown Republican Party. We've had both Republican and Democratic parties enter the parade many years. You know, several groups, several towns. We don't just have Orleans residents and Orleans businesses that enter the parade. We do get a lot of Eastham and a lot of Brewster, because we're kind of the hub for the 4th of July on that. So I did see it come through. I saw the gentleman's name being Adam Lang on the, contact information. And I know that he is associated with the United Cape Patriots group. I know they're a controversial group. I have followed some of what, their, what they do or what they support, not all of it. So I did take the application as well as an email from a concerned businesswoman asking if they have entered the parade. And I sent it to John Kelly's office. And I said, this application has come through. This email expressing concern also came through. They actually came through within 12 hours of each other. And I said, I know they're a controversial group and I would like guidance on how to best handle this. The response was they're a registered group with the state, the Brewster Town Republican Committee is a registered group with the state. Mr. Lang is the vice president of the group. We do not have the right to ban them. That would infringe on First Amendment rights. So I said, okay. And then on the parade day, and I should also state that their application or their entry form said they would be a decorated military truck. So on parade day, when we were in staging at the middle school, they did show up in their military truck, which does have a mock gun attached to it. I was told it was a mock gun. I don't know the facts
It
on
is.
that. It is? Okay. For me personally, and we can discuss, there's so many things here, First Amendment rights about banning. I understand First Amendment rights and we can't ban groups, but I saw that gun and I thought that is not appropriate for this parade. But my feeling was I had been told we can't ban them. When I started thinking about our parade entry form, it doesn't really state anything about decor. I sort of feel like that's common sense. I totally understand that you can't rely on, implication or common sense, and you do have to spell out, I guess, what you find distasteful. So for me personally, I found it distasteful for a parade that celebrates 4th of July that is meant for families, for children. I did think it was distasteful. But I sort of felt like we had no recourse. Whether we did or we didn't, I don't know, but that's how I felt in the moment. I'm going to say they were very cooperative. There were no issues on that end, on the staging area. From that point, I didn't see what happened. Whether they, I think they just rode in the parade, no problems. Since then, there has been numerous complaints about this group. I understand that, both because the truck that they had on the side of it does say United Cape Patriots. So people felt as though the United Cape Patriots were the entry. Additionally, numerous complaints about the gun. So we've received numerous complaints. We've received press inquiries. The select board has received numerous complaints. Mr. Kelly's office has received numerous complaints. And it was a lot last week, honestly. I did join public comment last week at the select board meeting just to address the facts of the situation. I know I kept saying that, but I wanted to get the facts out there because people were saying we allowed hate into our parade and our town and all of this. And so I just wanted to explain from a committee standpoint how everything actually happened and what actually happened in that situation. Open to hear from the group. My feeling is that First Amendment rights, we need some guidance from town hall on how we can be better prepared for a situation. Yes.
I'm prepared because we've been read the Riot Act.
Yep.
One of the things, and I think you can turn it to your advantage.
Mhm.
So we cannot ban free speech. We
Right.
can't, the Nazi flag, I can send you the articles, the most recent thing. But I think you can in terms of, and that's where the fine line's gonna be. In terms of decorum or decoration, there's some things we need to research. So if somebody comes and hangs a Nazi flag as a hate symbol or hate speech on a float, we'll need to kind of test that out. The
No,
law.
you can ban that.
No, I'm not so sure anymore. There was a Supreme Court law that was in 2008 that the Board of Selectmen, I can forward it to you, Ken. But I think what we can do is look at things like open carry law, for bearing guns. I think that you can suggest guidelines, and that's what will run by Mark Ford in terms of decoration,
Right.
if that makes sense. So we can't.
It is. So, and that's what I want to do is like, I think that this group needs to come up with guidelines because again, whether we had recourse or we didn't, it didn't feel like we did in that moment to address it with the group that was there. And so we need to come up with the guidelines and run it by whoever.
And I would go one step further. I would
Yeah.
have people on your entry forms, have people sign off that they've read and understood the guidelines
Yeah,
and submit that as part of their entry. And then you have the right if somebody doesn't register ahead to turn them away.
right.
So what we want to tease out is we may not be able to kind of good taste or decorum. That may not apply here, but I think you can also say that Orleans respects free speech above everything else.
Yeah,
And I think the parade has to be, my God, it's the symbol of independence, right? So
right.
if you can kind of change your perch from being reactive to being proactive, do a registration form, marry that signature that people understand, and say you will not be, unless you register and give yourselves a timeline, registration needs to be perceived by X number of days ahead. I think you've just got to tighten up your control and then take the power that we can give you.
I totally agree with that. Like, that's what I want to do for this committee. I also want to make sure if we have a situation, we need the support of the town administrator's office and the select board, and you've been very supportive.
But Jen, not just that, it needs to be done in a way that's enforceable. So when a
Right.
police officer is
Yeah.
called to the scene, there are very specific things that either it's yes or no based on observation.
Right,
So we got to tease this down to
yeah,
the
I
facts.
agree. We're on the same page on that. That's where I feel. I would be interested to hear from everybody else. Because
This afternoon, I spoke to a highly respected, retired Texas Supreme Court judge. He said, we don't have a hope in heck of keeping somebody like that out. The Nazi Party was allowed to march in a parade and approved by the Supreme Court. So it's very delicate what you can do. You can prohibit things that are anti, gender, or they're clearly hate signs and things like that. But this would be considered basically somebody's personal opinion, whatever this group is. And I'd never heard of it. So this has just gotten them more publicity
right,
than they ever would have got before.
I agree with that.
So, trying to fight them is not the way to, I think setting up something is all right.
And
I
so
agree.
what we have to be careful of, because this has happened in other communities, and I also was consulting some lawyers, and I'm getting one to research on our behalf to figure out, but what you have to do is also weigh in the tone of the parade that you don't let the parade be used as one party coming in and then counter demonstrations for that party. So
Right.
if you can strongly put the focus on family-friendly events and really market it hard as a children and family event, then I think we can drift. It's almost like PG, or G movies.
Yeah,
I think you got to come out of the gate strong on that ground.
I agree. Anyone else?
I don't know how comfortable I am with the committee being the ones responsible for coming up with these guidelines.
I don't have a problem with that. I mean, we're going to submit it to the lawyers and the town administrator anyway for review. But from what I know, other town committees have come up with similar things. And if you read them, I don't agree with necessarily with all of it, but you know, it's hard to do, harder than perhaps we think, because once you start down this road, everything leads to something else. And then you end up with a 12-page booklet of entry requirements. And that just turns people off. So the more paperwork we have, perhaps the more negative it becomes. So if we come up with something, it has to be fairly simple.
Yeah, and guys, this isn't rocket science. There are communities all over this country that have 4th of July parades.
Right.
So I think it's worth some research and finding the comfort level that you have as this particular committee, you know, based on how other communities are doing it. It's just the start, and yeah, and go
Yeah.
big. Get your most comfortable position, because the town will vet it. We won't be able to put out anything that will, you know, violate free
Right.
speech.
Yeah. And I think if that's the case, you know, I think we can at least have a starting point to see what would make us comfortable and then set it. That's
Jen,
my-
just to back up for a
Yeah.
second here.
Yep.
I understand those are bare bones submission forms.
Yeah,
And that the description of this vehicle is pretty vague. and
Yeah.
stuff. But I also think it's fair to say that if they had fully disclosed what the thing looked like, would the town have responded the same way? Because to me, it's pretty innocuous as submitted. But if you said, well, there's a, you know, life-size machine gun on a turret with ammo hanging off of it, you know, I didn't think it was fake.
yeah,
And by the way, there's going to be an off-leash German Shepherd growling all around the vehicle.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's clearly an intimidating, divisive undertone of violence.
Mhm.
If none of that is disclosed in the application form, I think there's that alone should give us some latitude to say,
yeah,
you know, I don't think you have to automatically race over, you know, cross the Rubicon, the First Amendment.
right,
That's just a misrepresentation. And
Yeah.
maybe that's part of the future vetting of these
Right.
things, that if what we see on paper is vastly different. So the Proud Boys next year come in because they said, well, they let in a Trump thing.
Yeah.
And they say, we're just gonna have a flag on a float, stuff like that. All of a sudden, there's all their stuff. And same thing,
same way.
same markers, you know, lack of disclosure. If somebody honestly entered under the Proud Boys and said, we're gonna be doing this, we're gonna be playing this music, we're gonna be screaming chants, we're gonna be wearing these things, they're probably not gonna get in to most places.
Right.
We don't have that.
Yeah.
So to me, before you get to First Amendment and Supreme Court and stuff like that, I think there's probably some, as Andrea said, some room where we have some discretion even before we get to that stage.
I agree. I think you made an excellent point. I think that the vehicle wasn't descriptive enough. I think to Andrea's point about like, it's a contract, we do have, I mean, you sign off that you don't hold, you know, there is a sign off on here. Hold it, you know, and a clause. We can add to the clause. The clause is just about, you know, not holding Orleans responsible for any claims of personal injury. It's a very basic clause, but I think we could add on there more to say, like, if you misrepresent, the committee has the right, or, you know, I think there's language to put into the,
To Andrea, exactly, to Andrea's point, you know, we could just come up with some discretionary language.
Yeah.
Run it by the town.
right,
But I think that that would be offer the committee a degree of shelter, you know, for something like this.
Yeah.
And so you get to staging and you look and you see something dramatically different. I don't know what happens after that, but at least you have an out.
right,
You say, well, you know, this isn't at all what you represented.
yeah,
Now Ken has a good point about First Amendment, but I'm trying to, you know, this is ahead of that.
I agree with you on that. I agree. So I feel like we maybe need to just do a separate meeting to come up with what we feel should be a part of this. If everyone agrees.
Yeah,
Well,
I really
well,
like, I
well,
really like her premise, you
Yeah.
know, go for it
Right,
and then see what happens.
yeah. Yeah, agreed. Okay.
By the way, Jen, I would like to, you know, you kind of took a little bit of the fall for that vehicle. You did have a few other things going on that morning.
Right.
Okay, so that, I mean, that thing was one of, 124 things on your to-do list. And so, you're a superwoman, but you're not bionic. And
Right.
I just wanted to give some context about that because it was there was a lot going on. that
Yeah.
morning.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate that somebody basically gamed the system.
I agree, and it is what it is. We'll learn from it and move on. Part of it was definitely disappointing.
Right.
Yeah, we get these letters and
Yep.
they're hurtful.
Yeah.
I think we have to look at it in a generic way, not
Agreed.
just about
No,
them,
and I agree with
Right.
that.
because
yeah.
they get in parades all over the Northeast.
Right,
Right.
They're allowed. you
Yeah.
know. So when they describe themselves fully, I expect they get it,
right.
So we have to develop something that's more generic, vis-a-vis what Andrea said maybe about, putting some clause in there, like it has to meet the theme.
The spirit of-
Can I just, I just have to throw this out because if you decided that one year that the theme was kindness or children and you had a group like the Proud Boys or Nazis, whoever came in, it would be hysterical. It would be funny because it would be so out of place.
Yeah,
And I think that's where you've got the seeds of the character that you set for each year and what you focus on as the committee. That's where I think if you can set the tone in such a way that anybody who would subvert that tone is so out of place, you put them at the end of the line and leave it alone.
right.
No, you laugh at them.
Right.
Do
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. All right,
I like that, like fleshing out the theme.
yeah, yeah, I do. too.
The risk to that is there are a lot of people who want to be in the parade and they put something in, let's just take, and this may be totally inaccurate, the farm,
Mhm.
because they always have beautiful floats, but they don't always meet whatever the theme is,
Right,
so we might lose people who are not going to be bothered to develop a float that is a theme. They just want to put the family members in the back of a truck with some American flags and all that sort of thing, and have a good time,
yeah,
So it's a
yeah.
mixy one
It
there.
is.
This would be a whole session.
No, it absolutely would, and that's why I kind of was like trying to wrap my head around approaching it along with everything else that we have to do today. But, if no one has anything else on that topic, I would love to move on.
Let's move on.
Kind of over it.
You have 25 minutes to martini time.
Oh, okay.
That's
Whoops, you
one
didn't
word.
hear that, Andrew.
So now, like the actual debrief of the parade minus that
Yeah.
subject.
Was a great parade.
Yeah, it was a great parade. I have like two overwhelming notes that are just in my head. One, Cynthia brought up, I do want to talk about entertainment contracts. And because typically we would reach out to Michaela and ask her to put out contracts over the summer, early fall, and then we sort of start getting back into our planning process. And I would love to just talk about that today to see who we'd like to invite back, or if you guys want to table it, just because I thought because of other parades being canceled or being on different days, we were able to get more bands and different bands and entertainers, and I thought that added to the parade, so I'd love to get ahead of that. One of the entertainers,
Be careful.
yep, I don't know that we should ask back based on how a volunteer was treated, so that's my one note about entertainment. And then my other note is we've got to figure out volunteers and being in the right place at the right time. I mean, I was alone at the middle school staging for quite some time. And the police had forgotten a barrier, which is no problem. We've talked about it, but it just made things challenging for me for a while. So I just think next year we really have to figure all of that out and making sure that committee members and like the staging volunteers are there before 8 o'clock.
Was that a function, Jim, of people not showing or?
No, I think we just got our wires crossed on time.
Mhm.
Again, we've only done this one other time. And then I think we just got wires crossed on the correct times. I had it on a spreadsheet, but I don't think it was super clear the way that I sent it. It's not a big deal. We should make a note now for next year, is my thought.
I think just a topic with the committee doing like a run-up show.
Yeah.
Talking through, making sure we all, which this year was crazy.
Right.
So
Yeah,
everyone was just
exactly.
running off to do whatever they could to make this happen.
I agree. I like do a run of show for myself in my head because that's how my brain works, but we didn't do it together because we chose to cancel the meeting that we had originally thought about doing on the 25th because we were all doing more like action items and less meetings because we had 4 weeks to do this. So it's definitely not a criticism, but I just think we need to make sure. And you and Todd, you know, I was really worried about the volunteers. I don't even know where you got them all, but that was great. So, and they were new people too, which was really great. So I don't know, let's start with Ken and just do like debrief by
Well,
section.
I don't get to see anything down where you are.
Yeah, but
so
from you do so
From where
much.
I am, I see what Peter does, you know, which
Yep.
I just applaud him and tell him just stay there.
Yeah.
Don't leave.
Don't leave.
You know. The bands were very cooperative.
Mhm.
If we needed somebody to come out in a different order, they backed up and made space so somebody could pull out. I thought that all went, from my perspective anyway, really, really good. And I think it was a lot better, even though we had more than 2 years ago.
Yeah,
And they all got there on time. The only Jim Reynolds got there the time I told him to, but by then Chandler Travis was having a nervous hissy fit.
yeah,
You know? So, you know, it all went well. I mean, and Todd drove all the way over to Dennis to pick up a trailer.
Yeah.
You know, and bring it back and then take it back. So well, you were there, Cynthia. I don't think we saw anything that was a problem, did we?
No.
Some people do try to park in the grass where we park, you know, but Peter got them to go down the end so that.
Yeah.
And so I don't have really a negative thing to bring up, and off the top of my head, from that standpoint, I don't have anything to complain about. Just need to know who the bands are.
Yeah.
You know, getting to know we got 2 more bands 3 days before the parade.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that won't happen
I
again.
lost my hair over that.
That won't happen again. That was a
Yeah.
2021.
Oh, it was well worth it.
And you are our Superman
I
of
know.
this committee,
Mhm.
getting all that.
So they-
so.
I think, and Andrea, if you get a chance at this sometime, the Martin Company, John Martin, they need a pat on the back anytime you can give it to them.
Big time.
They're big time, yeah. I mean,
They give us how many for our committee trucks?
they gave us 3 or 4 trucks and trailers.
Right. for the
Plus they
committee.
gave 2 to somebody else.
Yeah,
Could actually, it's, by the time the select board meeting comes out and we can say those things, it's 10 o'clock at night, and nobody's listening. But
I am.
if what, I know you are, Ken.
yeah.
In hand, but if one of you came to public speak,
I
because
was planning on, yeah.
yeah, Meph and I were talking about the, you know, the cooperation in town, but if one of you came to public speak and thanked people at the top of the meeting, that would be fantastic.
Great idea.
I was planning on doing that and I wanted to do it last week, but I was just not in the right.
Frame of
mindset.
mind.
Yeah. So we can do that next week for sure. I think. Hillary, anything?
You know, the only thing is, you know, my responsibility was the Orleans Elementary School student. And if how you felt that went with coming up with theme ideas and giving it to the, you know, kids to choose if that worked and if you still want to do that next year.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't do it for this year, but that's what we had started for last year before it got canceled. I don't know, what do you all think?
I mean, I guess, I think it makes more sense, particularly in light of, trying to do family-friendly themes, to come up with, a list of 4 or 5 themes and letting the kids choose from that. And then, pulling a name out of the hat.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think the only issue there we've had, 2 years ago, we had a real issue,
Right,
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 with the winner.
yeah,
And this year we had an issue,
yeah,
not with the kid, but with the parent not getting back to you. So we didn't know until the day before if we needed a vehicle or not.
yeah.
And
right,
thank goodness for Peter again,
Yeah,
Yes.
So,
that's the, what do you
Yeah,
call
I
it,
don't
like
know
the
how-
loose end of the whole
Yeah.
thing.
and I don't love, just for you, I don't
Yeah.
love you having to like chase down a kid on the 4th, and there's so much going on,
Yeah.
like,
yeah,
I just think it's fun if the parent participates. I think maybe, again, guidelines, the parent has to ride with the kid. I don't know.
Right, maybe someone at the school chooses a kid and, this is, they almost have to sign off on what the float sign off on, there'll be
Yeah.
a parent with the child and blah, blah, blah. And maybe there's an alternate if,
something. But if you
Yeah.
try to get the parent to go, that parent may be working that day.
right, yeah,
And for a lot of them, that's, they can't
Right.
afford to take off time
and that was an
from the
issue
restaurant.
for this
Yeah, just-
child's mom.
Yeah.
They had people, guests in town and stuff.
Maybe we should, when we start meeting in the fall, we should just revisit the process.
Yeah,
I think, the kid-friendly thing,
Yeah.
yeah,
you should do it.
totally, yeah,
But maybe we should get more publicity out.
Yeah.
yeah.
Heather?
Just reiterating Ken's comments from, it's my first time, doing this, since last year canceled, and I thought the OES situation went really well. The volunteers all showed up. They were some a little later than others, but they just jumped right in and were super helpful. I spoke to them all afterwards via email and had just a lot of compliments on how well organized everything was, and they all want to do it again next year. And so, yeah, a couple of them brought kids. So yeah, it was great. Yeah, I had positive feedback, comments on how well spaced the parade was, that everything was nicely, there was enough space between floats, but it wasn't like you were waiting for 5 minutes for the next thing to come. I had more than one person say that. And
The flow was good.
we had plenty of patients.
Yeah.
We were able to keep 90% of them, because it just fell apart. But so we shouldn't have to spend much on it.
What if we add?
Yeah, unless we get so many entries.
Okay. Okay. I think it's huge that you were able to get so many volunteers and they want to come back. That was one of my biggest concerns. The previous committee sort of walked us through our first year on our own and then said, but then we're stepping back. So that was great.
A
Thanks
lot of them
again.
came through the website, and Todd did a great job just getting them posted on some
Yeah.
social media sites. I think that definitely helped. Got a few from our neighborhood
Yeah,
association, which is great.
Ben?
So I was in charge of candy this year. Which we ordered 200 pounds of candy, and we went through all of it. And
I think that's.
In the
Next year,
first
more
block of the parade.
Real short, I thought.
Yeah, sure, you're right, you're right. But so I have notes around that, because I think it is, when you just see all the kids with their bags and they're so excited, that I just feel like that's a really important part of this parade. So we had been told that there were some people that were willing to hand out candy, but I wasn't completely clear on who those individuals would be. And I had 2 carts full of candy that I gave one to the right people and then one to the wrong people. And then we had 4 people that were willing to hand out candy as well. and we were turning volunteer t-shirts inside out to put candy in bags. So just need a little bit better organization for that I am happy to, take on. But it is exciting to see, that much interest and that we have people that are willing to hand candy out. And I think the cards are probably the best thing because the people who use their own bags or the shirts just ran out of it really
Yeah.
quickly. And then the big corners that are just filled with kids, it's really hard even for the people handing out to get all that candy to them. So I wondered if there was a way that we could drop candy off in advance. Maybe there's a police officer that is overlooking it in addition to everything else they're doing. But they're always excited to see the kids with the candy as well. But anyway, just, how we can more effectively make the kids on the big corners happy is something that I thought about. So then the other thing I had down was photos of the parade. We didn't talk about hiring a photographer. Someone sent us incredible photos.
Yeah,
Is that-
Photos or the
I think-
video?
Video.
Video,
The video
and
was great.
we got-
Yeah, that was I
Yeah.
sent that around.
Yeah.
I got that from Paul Cass,
That was
and
great.
he films it every year, so if you wanted to go back and look. But you can get some tremendous information off of that when you've got time to look at it,
Yeah.
sequentially and not be jumping around. So, Paul does a great job of that.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
Yeah.
And then.
His name is Raj. I don't remember his last name. He actually, I knew he was coming, but he was riding with Kevin Higgins and taking photos of the crowd, which was just a new perspective. And then he got out and took photos of the parade. And they were really
They were
nice. So we
great
should
photos.
post them, and he said they can go on the website too.
Yeah, so that is just something that I think we should make sure we have someone doing that because it's incredibly helpful for marketing, social media, posts, things like that we have nice photos, not us on our cell phone.
Yeah.
So I have that down. And then the only other thing was at the end of the parade, we were waiting for a band to come back to the staging area and we have to decorate everything and
Yeah.
so somehow they all ended up, and I think Ken, you had their check, so they found us eventually, which was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But that could put us in a challenging position for those of us who are in charge of staying after to get all of that stuff together if the people are in the wrong places. So that was the only thing.
Yeah, I think we have to communicate that with the drivers.
Yeah.
It's tough because it just, the whole parade goes across, they're blocking the street.
Right.
It's like, yeah,
I mean, most of them know where to come for their check.
right, yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
But then Hillary and I were doing the awards at that point, and then they're trapped in the group, and
Yeah.
that's part of the problem.
I mean, I have to try and watch them because we've had them leave with generators that I've
Yeah.
right.
signed
Yeah.
for,
Your gas can.
my gas can,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah,
So, yeah, but it's manageable and
Yeah.
it's not a big. So your point about on the corners, and I can only talk to two corners. The one where the judge's truck is, could leave the candy at his truck. That would be one idea. And little way down the road, I'm sure the church
yeah,
could hold some candy there for us. So that's two spots.
yeah.
Ooh, that just reminded me, maybe something special next year for the nursing home.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, my
Oh,
gosh.
that's a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah, the last two times going by there, it's so moving and everyone's outside and. wanted
It's
to
like the
more.
highlight of their.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought about,
What's it, their big day?
well, they
Yeah,
all go
they
out,
come out.
yeah, and
Yeah.
they sit and
Sitting
they
and-
watch,
Yeah,
yeah, it's nice.
It's a good effort to make it come.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
okay, perfect.
The only thing I was gonna add to the comments is, Jen, I think this was a dynamic this year where supply of parade participants exceeded demand. It's gonna flip
Yeah,
next year. So the idea, your instinct to lock things in early,
yeah,
dead right.
yeah, I agree, definitely supply with,
And whatever's left after January 1st is not going to probably be
right,
particularly compelling.
yeah.
So it's not my normal style to plan that far ahead, but
Well, I would just like to see like the entertainment get locked in and then we can take some time off.
that's what I'm referring to,
Jump
the
back.
bands
Yeah,
and.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then stuff like the staging at 7:30 or 8.
Right, agreed.
So for the entertainment, I'm all for locking everybody in as well. I had one of our volunteers express disappointment in how they were spoken to by one of the entertainers in the parade. I guess not renewing that contract may be slightly extreme, but a conversation, I think, with the individual, because our volunteers, we need volunteers.
Yeah,
So for someone that's getting paid to be in the parade, incredibly rude to someone who's taking their 4th of July
Yeah.
morning to be with us. I just don't want to do.
I'm going to make you feel worse.
uh-oh.
That entertainment group had 2 notices about where to go to.
Well, also, I mean, I'm really unhappy with how the person spoke to the volunteer. It was really crossing a line, and one of the comments was, "You don't know who I am? Where have you been for 9 years?" Well, if you've been doing this for 9 years, you should know where to go.
Yeah, they knew where to go last year,
Yeah.
2 years ago, and the one before that, so.
I mean, Ken, you have dealt with this entertainer more than I have, so
Thank
I
you.
would defer to you. I just am really against volunteers make this parade happen.
Yep,
And in general, I work with a lot of volunteers, like volunteers make events happen, and that was extremely.
but I can,
uncalled for.
if we wanted to, I know the spouse,
Yeah,
I could perhaps approach it that way.
yeah,
Can you have a chat with your spouse about, because there's some really hurt feelings out there.
yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't blame that volunteer, didn't come back next year.
No, and that particular volunteer was one that I called as a 911, get over here now, I'm alone and I can't handle what's happening. So, and she said she would gladly do it again next year for us. And that was at the staging, we talked about moving the middle school, when you give out the numbers, to being at a certain point, and the previous group had like gone up to every float and checked them in, and I was like, no, we're gonna change it and do it this way, and she jumped right in, managed it perfectly and made it much more efficient, and then really got reamed, and I just really find that inappropriate.
I would ask Michaela to hold off on that contract
Yeah,
until we decide on this a little further down the road.
yeah,
And then if necessary, I'll have the conversation.
okay. That that works for me. Okay.
Do we need to do something for that volunteer?
No, she's
Good.
Yeah.
Like a thank you note.
We're gonna, we need to talk about thank you notes, yeah. Yep. So that is the next, if there's no other debrief notes, thank you notes would be the next.
Stationery is ordered. It's supposed to be here.
Okay,
So I'm sorry, that's.
no,
I did some cards and I did some.
okay,
paper.
perfect. So we need to come up with a list of the thank you notes. And obviously the volunteers. We also on Saturday night brought pizza to the police department, pizza and cookies on behalf of the 4th of July committee. But we should be thanking, the folks at the town who helps the police department, the trucks. So do you have like mailing addresses, or you already sent them? Okay.
Except for, I think, well, I don't have Peter's address because he's afraid I'll move in with him this year. But the 2 I don't have are the ones I accosted in the parking lot and said, can we use your convertible?
Oh,
So I have their phone numbers, but no
Okay.
addresses.
Okay.
I've gotten all but 3, I think, of the people who showed up to decorate.
Yeah.
The candy people. And I meant to do it that day and and ask them and then
Yeah.
just, phew, and
Yeah,
then
no.
it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So I ended up emailing them to ask them for their addresses and most of them got back to me, but several haven't.
Are these going to be personalized letters or is this a form?
Personalized, so I was thinking like we could do that as a group.
If I can just offer a suggestion, send on the one to Barroso Landscaping, give him an extra kudo because he comes decorated, you know, and that saves us.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, anything else?
Jen, can I ask you another question?
Yeah.
And this is to help the town. This is a separate thing, but your kind of tone and ethic about running and on volunteers and thanking volunteers, that's one of our select board goals, because I don't think we do it well enough as a community.
Mhm.
So maybe in our conversations in the coming year, because I think you guys probably do it really well. Maybe you can educate us about what's essential and think about maybe how we could grow the tone that you have with the parade and the committee for all volunteers in the town. That would help us out a lot.
Sure. We actually need to vote on the entertainment contract.
To lock them in.
Yeah. How do we do that?
I make a motion that we ask the town administrator's office to lock in the contracts of the attached list of bands. And that would include Brewster and Harwich,
Right,
but not the other one we've been discussing. That's my motion.
Expeditiously as possible. Put that in there.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
yeah.
I've
I
learned
didn't
that
hear you
from
say
the
that.
select board.
Okay, so we have a motion to lock in the entertainment contracts we've been talking about. Second?
The fife and drum thing, is that included in that?
Yes, it is. Yeah, they were not available because of the timeline of it.
No, I meant the little one out of Wellfleet.
They will not leave Wellfleet
Okay.
because that's where they're from. They did it this year because there was no Wellfleet parade. Which was great. And I said to her, if something ever changes and you want to leave Wellfleet, we'll take you in Orleans. And she said, talk to Wellfleet about changing the time of your parade. Which I don't know that will happen.
Boy,
But-
so maybe an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a motion. Is there a second? Second. Okay. All in favor?
Right.
So moved. I will get it to Michaela. Last item, if there isn't anything else, is the next meeting date. My suggestion, we go back to Tuesdays at 4 and move it till September to open if people think we need to meet prior.
If we're going to discuss rules, and then revising them and coming back for another meeting and looking at them again, I think, sooner rather than,
Okay.
or at least plan on more meetings than we would normally have. Maybe.
Yeah, we
Because-
normally would do once a month.
Yeah,
you
but
wanna
we
meet
had some
earlier.
where we didn't,
Yeah, in the winter.
Yeah.
End of August. I'm just gonna say personally, I'd love a little. break.
Have a lot.
Yeah,
I would
a
say
lot.
September if we need to ramp up it. So-
Yeah. Does that work, Ken, if we do September?
you just send me a note. and I'll-
So maybe the 14th, second.
September 14th, sure, at 4 PM.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get that on the agenda. Anything else before we break?
I just want to say thank you, did awesome.
Yeah, great job,
Madam
Madam Chair.
Andrea, thank you for being here. We appreciate
Thank
you.
you, Andrea.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Andrea.
My pleasure. Just, if you do go back to the Tuesdays at 4, I do
Yeah.
have another meeting at that time, but just call me
Okay.
when you need me
Yep.
and then I'll make arrangements, okay?
Okay.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you,
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Andrea.
Bye.
So adjourn at 5 on the dot. Motion. from
There you go,
someone?
Ken.
I'll motion to adjourn.
We forgot to say thanks to Peter.
No, I said thanks to him.
Yeah.